Now, before we are going to create our database class, let's first import our database to our MySQL database server. Now, if you open DBase folder, which you've received together with the exercise files, you can see we have ecommerce.sql file there. This is what we're going to be importing to our MySQL database. So if you open your phpMyAdmin, create the new database called ecommerce. There we go. And make sure that the MySQL connection collection is UTF-8 general_CI. Now click on create. Now we are inside of our e-commerce database. Click on the import tab. Click on the browse button. Go to our site's root. Go to our dbase folder. Select our ecommerce.sql file. Click on open and click on go. This will import the entire structure of our database. So that's all we have to do for now. Now if we go back to our site, open our classes folder and create a new file, call it dbase.php. Now inside of this file, let's create a new class, obviously, class called dbase. It doesn't extend anything, it's just a normal standalone class. We're going to create a few private and a few public properties. First private property will be _host, and we'll assign the local host value to it. Depending on where you are connecting, what server, a database server you're connecting, obviously this might be different. Normally the standard is localhost. Next one, also private, because we don't want this to be available outside of this class. Will be the user, which is the username to connect to our database, which will be root in most of the cases, unless you've created a different name for your MySQL database server. Then next one will be also private password, whatever your password to access your MySQL database is. I'm just going to type in password because that's what I use to connect to my MySQL database server. Then another one, private, will be the name of the database we want to connect to. And we've just created a database called ecommerce. So these are the parameters which we'll be using to connect to the database. Now, the next one will be private also. The instance of the connection, which will be called db, starting with underscore, which will be set to false by default. Then we create one public property called last query, and we assign null to it. Then another public affected rows, and we assign value of 0 to it. Next set will be last inserted key, which is public insert keys array. Sorry, wrong. This is for actually inserting records to the database, which we'll be using a little bit later on. This is just an array. Then we have public property insert values, again array. Then we have public property called update sets, which is also an array. All these three will be used later on when we're going to be creating the function methods inside of this dbase class too. These two will be used for inserting records. This one will be used for updating records. These will be two common methods to use by referring to this specific class. Then we have public parameter called ID, which will basically store the ID, as I've already mentioned, the ID of the last inserted record to the database. Then, the thing we haven't seen yet, public function construct. Now, what function construct does is it is executed every time automatically whenever you instantiate the class. So let's say we create a new instance somewhere on the page. I'm just typing here, but let's say dbase equals new dbase, and at this specific point, when we've instantiated this class already, this construct has been executed. in the older days, you would create the function called exactly the same as the class name is, but now you simply use this construct function, which does exactly the same. So in this one, we will make sure that the connect function, which we'll create in just a second, is automatically executed. So we connect into the database whenever the instance of a DBase class is called, is created. And now, because connect method won't be a static method, we will be using different option, which will, instead of, as you may remember, we were calling static methods and properties using self keyword. Now, to the normal methods and properties, to call them, we refer to them, we use keyword this with the $sign in front of it. This and our arrow symbol, and then connect method, which we'll be calling later, which we'll be creating in just a second, basically. So now let's create this connect method. So private function connect. And we will continue to create this method in the next video.